Now, Game Week 34 is clearly going to be a popular time for FPL managers to use their free hit. And if you're one of those managers, I've got a draft for you. Right, just before we get into the draft itself, I've got some basic free hit tips just to go through. Now, if you already know most of this, then feel free to skip and get into the draft itself. But for me, I think it's important just to remind people of, the rules of engagement, I guess, around the free hit. So the week after you play the chip, you're going to have the same team as you did for the previous week. You can't cancel it after you've confirmed it. And whatever happens, however many transfers you have going into Game Week 34, you will have one free transfer the following game week. So in Game Week 35, you'll have one. You can make transfers in Game Week 34, then activate your free hit chip, but they will not save. So those transfers will just be wiped. And again, you'll be left with the same team for Game Week 35 as you had for the Game Week 33 deadline. And ultimately, throughout the free hit, your non-free hit team will still be affected by price changes. So they're potentially thinking of people with the likes of Connor, Bradley, etc., who I expect to go down in price over the next week or so. Those players are still going to be impacted by price changes. Right, let's get into the draft, shall we? Goalkeepers and defenders up first then. I've gone for Pickford in goal, Aït-Nouri, Gabriel and Virgil van Dijk as my starting four. Dean Henderson on the bench off the back of a really good performance against Liverpool. Senesi and Munoz as my two bench defenders. Now, question marks, I guess, on Aït-Nouri. He didn't feature in Game Week 33, and I think ultimately we need to wait for news. But I think Wolves having a decent double and Aït-Nouri being so attacking for them, I think at the moment, I've got to say, I think I'd pick him for 34. Obviously, we need to hear from Gary O'Neill, his injury status in the press conference. Obviously, picked up a calf strain in Game Week 32. For me, I think it'd be good to play both games in 34. But again, like I said, we need to wait for press conference news. I think Senesi and Munoz from Bournemouth and Crystal Palace, respectively, are perfectly decent fill-ins if Aït-Nouri isn't fit. Gabriel, I think, is literally the best defender in the game. Arsenal are the best defence in the league, and I think of all of the defenders in the game, considering just how threatening Gabriel is from set pieces, I think he poses the most goal threat of all defenders in the Premier League at the moment. So for me, he's the best defender in the game and would definitely be in any free hit draft that I come up with. And of course, got a double in 34 as well, so makes sense to go for him. And then Virgil van Dijk as the other defender. I don't mind Trent if you can stretch to him. We'll talk a little bit more about potential other options you could go for. For me, I think just with Trent coming back from injury, Joe Gomez being available, who could play right back, I just question if Trent is going to start both games. And I think if you're picking a defender, you want surety that they're going to play, especially, because you only get your clean sheet points, for example, if they play 60 minutes and start the game. So yeah, Virgil van Dijk, I think, kind of ticks all the boxes you want from a defender. And I do think Liverpool have a clean sheet in them. Maybe in the Everton game. That tends to be a relatively low-scoring game. And to be honest, they're not playing all that well at the moment going forward. So I think they're going to have to rely on their defence to get them through some games. So yeah, Aït-Nouri, Gabriel, Virgil and Pickford are my starting four. Right, like I said, I just wanted to talk through some potential other options in both of the positions. So on the goalkeeper side, I think David Raya equally as good a pick as Jordan Pickford. The reason I haven't got Raya in this draft is because I've got two other Arsenal players alongside Gabriel, so didn't have room for Raya. I think Pickford is really good. I believe Everton have kept 9 clean sheets so far this season. They've yet to play Chelsea in Game Week 33, so they could well keep another and put it up to 10. That's really decent. And one thing I'd say about Pickford over Raya is that he makes a really decent amount of saves as well. I think he's on over 3 saves per game. That means pretty much every time he steps out onto a football pitch, he gets saves bonus. Whereas Raya, it's clean sheet or bust for Raya. And we've seen, I've just watched the first half of the game in Game Week 33, Remains to be seen how that game actually finishes against Villa, but they were very lucky not to concede. And it just shows the fine line, I guess, of keeping clean sheets versus not. So I'd personally favour a goalkeeper that makes a lot of saves. I think Neto and Henderson are perfectly decent picks as well from Bournemouth and Palace respectively. I just think Raya and Pickford, they have slightly better defences in front of them. And then I'd avoid Kelleher. Alisson's back in the team already, right? So yeah, I'd avoid Kelleher. And I think Alisson's just a little bit too expensive when you compare him to the likes of Raya and Pickford. You could go for him, but for me, I'd want 3 other Liverpool players in my draft. And then, of course, Sheffield United have a double in 34 as well, right? But you're not going to want to pick their keeper. Quick talk through some of the defenders. So on the left, I've got my great picks. So I think Gabriel, Saliba and White are very, very good picks from their respective teams. Arsenal being that team. I just think Gabriel comes with the most goal threat and is the cheapest of the three. So for me, it makes sense to pick him above the other two. Van Dijk and Trent, I've obviously got Van Dijk in my draft. Trent, I mean, I can't deny Trent as a good option, right? He's a little bit too expensive to fit him into this team with a 100 million budget. You might be able to do it depending on how good you are for cash in the bank, but I wanted to make this team fair that everyone could build it. And of course, I think Aït-Nouri is a good pick as well. We just need to make sure he's fit. Branthwaite and Mykolenko from Everton, I think are decent picks as well. Branthwaite probably being the cheapest starting defender with the double game week. And like I said, Everton are not too bad defensively. Mykolenko being a little bit more expensive, but having a little bit more attacking threat. Zabarnyi, Adam Smith and Senesi of Bournemouth, I think they're likely to play both games of the double. I'd say Zabarnyi is the most nailed to start both games. Adam Smith probably in the middle. Senesi, just coming back from injury, although he definitely carries the most attacking threat of all of the Bournemouth defence. And then Munoz of Crystal Palace as well. He's basically playing as a right winger against Liverpool. I really quite like him as a player and an option. So yeah, I definitely consider him a decent pick. Outside of those guys, I'm not really sure I'm interested in any of the other double game week defenders. I'd say particularly I wouldn't pick any other Liverpool defenders than Van Dijk and Trent because we've just seen them get rotated so much this season. I couldn't even tell you if Robertson plays both games of the double. He could be a good shout, but you've seen him rotated enough this season that would make me doubt. And from an attacking perspective, he's just not quite as good as Trent. And then any other Arsenal defender for me, I'd be kind of put off by. We've seen Kivior and Zinchenko both playing at left back. Who knows who's going to play out of the two of them? So for me, I'd say Gabriel, Saliba and White from Arsenal, Van Dijk and Trent from Liverpool. All right, on to the midfield. And I think, to be honest, Saka and Salah pretty much pick themselves. I've gone for Salah as captain. I think that's quite an obvious decision, right? And the two of these guys, like I said, they kind of pick themselves. So the question really around the midfield is who do you pick to go alongside these two? I've gone for Havertz and Eze. Talk about Havertz first, and we'll get onto a little feature I've got on Eze. I really like Kai Havertz. He started against Villa playing in midfield, but in recent fixtures he's been the Arsenal starting number 9. I think that role has suited him really well. I think also another feature that people don't think about Kai Havertz is his height. The guy's 6'4", so I think he also brings a bit of goal threat and attacking threat from set pieces as well, and I think we could see that come into the fray towards the end of the season too. I just really like him in the number 9 position. Arteta started with Jesus in the number 9 spot against Villa, but he didn't look all that clever in the first half at least. So for me, I think Havertz is going to get more minutes at number 9, and even if he starts in the midfield, I think he's still a good option. And to be honest, he seems to be getting further forward and playing more advanced than Odegaard, and I think he's going to be more involved in the goals than Odegaard is. So for that reason, I think you're best off picking Havertz as a midfielder. Eberiche Eze, off the back of a goal against Liverpool. I'll talk about him now. I really like him as an option. He's nailed to start for Palace. He's a 90-minute man. He genuinely seems to be involved in every single goal I see Crystal Palace score. Whether he gets the assist or actually taps it in himself, I think he's a lovely option. He takes free kicks and penalties when I believe Elise isn't on the pitch. I think Elise is the designated penalty taker. It goes without saying Elise is a decent option as well. I'd just say just returning from injury as Elise is, I think Eze's minutes are going to be more guaranteed, which for me puts him sort of just ahead as an option. And like I said, when talking about his, other players' fixtures, he's got a really nice double. There isn't a team there that I would say, would be hard to score against. I think West Ham and Newcastle have proven to be fairly leaky defences across this season, right? So wouldn't be surprised to see Eze score in both those fixtures. And also, particularly if you're on your free hit, I think he's a really nice option because not many people are going to be using a free transfer to bring Eze in, right? It doesn't make sense for me. I don't think I would be doing it on a free transfer. But given you're on your free hit, I think you'd have the opportunity to do it. Given he's only 3.2% owned, I think it could maximise, your potential points that players not on their free hit are not going to be able to get, if that makes sense. So all those reasons combined, I think Eze is a great option. I think it's fair to say that the midfield is where most of the decent options lie, right? So as you'd expect, this list is longer than some of the other positions. I think Saka, Salah and Eze are the three sort of great picks as midfielders, particularly Salah and Saka. I think, I don't like using the word essential too much, but I think you've got to pretty much pick them, haven't you? I'd say other decent picks, you could have Diaz and McAllister from Liverpool. I really like Luis Diaz as a player. He just hasn't been getting involved in the goals enough recently for me to say that he's a great pick. I do think he probably plays both games of the double, so I don't mind him. McAllister's nailed on, of course, for Liverpool. Looking really good in most of the games he played. Of course, it was a poor showing from the whole of Liverpool, wasn't it, against Palace. I do expect them to bounce back for game week 34, and he's definitely been involved in the goals and assists of recent. I'd say Jota is also an option, but I think we need to see how he lines up in the Europa League, because at the moment I couldn't guarantee you that Jota plays both games of the double. I said Odegaard is a very decent option for Arsenal. I just slightly prefer Havertz because he seems to just be playing a bit more advanced and just being a little bit more involved in the goals. Sarabia and Hwang from Wolves are good options. I probably just prefer Sarabia with Hwang, returning from injury as he is. I wanted to put Cole Palmer in there because I think even with a single game week, albeit it's against Arsenal, I think he can still be a decent option. And I wouldn't be worried about, I wouldn't be super worried about picking a single game week player, although I do think if you're on your free hit, you're probably best off picking 11 players with a double, right? Little differential, I think. Brereton Diaz for Sheffield United, right? I think if you're on your free hit, it's a really nice opportunity to maybe just pick one differential in your team that doubles, because ultimately their floor is going to be 4 points, which is basically a single game week player getting an assist. So it could well be worth the risk of picking a nice sort of differential double game week player. And like I said, Eze is a really good option. But another one I think is Brereton Diaz. I think he's the strongest of the Sheffield United options you can go for. And I think Elise, it'd be unfair to say he's not a decent pick as well, wouldn't it? I just think with his return from injury, his minutes are going to be managed a little bit compared to Eze. So for me, I think Eze just edges it. I'd avoid pretty much any others. I think these are pretty much all of the players from the respective teams that double. And of course, Cole Palmer that I think are actually pickable. Beyond this list, I think there's plenty to go from this list. I'm not sure I'd be picking anyone. But let me know in the comments if I have forgotten anyone. Right, forwards then. And in this draft, I've gone for Solanke, Darwin Núñez and Matheus Cunha of Wolves. I really like all three of these players. I think Solanke is probably the best forward with a double game week in 34. By far the best forward for 34, in my opinion. He's in good goal scoring form, 90-minute man for Bournemouth. In fact, I've got a little bit more to talk about him. I think the international break that he got a 2-week rest for really helped him, because before that he was really struggling with that sort of recurring knee injury that he had, but he seems to be completely back fit and ready to go. He's nailed on for 90 minutes for Bournemouth, as we know, takes their penalties. He just kind of ticks all the boxes of a good FPL striker in my mind. And of course, he's got a double against Villa and Wolves, who I think are two teams he could feasibly score against. Yeah, I just really like him as an option because he ticks all the boxes you want in a good FPL asset. As for Darwin Núñez, you could, an alternative I have for this draft, and we'll get onto it, but you could potentially pick Luis Diaz or some other midfielder in his place. I think when you get to like the 10th and 11th men in this team, looking at Havertz and Darwin Núñez mainly, you could go different from them, right? I still think Darwin Núñez can do quite well in game week 34. I'm still sucked into the trap of Darwin Núñez because regardless of, whether he scores or not, he looks threatening in every game. And I just feel like in any game he could come away with a hat-trick. So I do like him as an option. And then Matheus Cunha, please ignore those expected points below his name. Obviously, he was a bit of an injury doubt going into game week 33. Obviously started the game and looks to be fully fit. Draft Hound still hasn't updated yet. I think Cunha is probably the second best forward to go for game week 34, to be honest. I really like him as an option. Now to start for Wolves, looking really, really dangerous. I think he's a quality player, and he takes the penalties, I believe, regardless of who's on the pitch. He is the designated penalty taker for Wolves. And yeah, I just wanted to talk through the other forward options that you could potentially pick. Like I said, I think Solanke and Cunha are the two top forwards for game week 34. I've gone for Darwin in my particular draft, but other options could be Calvert-Lewin, Semenyo, Mateta, who is obviously on my bench for this. Well, it's not on this bench for this draft, but he's on the bench for the next one you're about to see. And then Haaland and Watkins, I know they both got a single game week, but I think they could compete with the double game week assets. I definitely think that they could equally score points. Haaland, got the goal scoring record in Premier League, and Watkins is the top scoring player in FPL right now. So for me, there's no reason to suggest that they couldn't outscore other players with a double. Oh, it's a tough one because he started against Villa in game week 33, but I'm just not sure about Jesus. I don't think he's nailed on to start both games of the double. And I got to say, I don't think many people are going to be looking at picking him anyway, because I think there are clearly 3 other Arsenal players that are stronger options. But if you were thinking of going differential and picking Jesus, which some people might be of the mind to do, I just think you can do better. And I'm a little bit worried about him playing both games. So for me, I'd avoid Jesus. I think those guys are the decent picks. Solanke and Cunha are the highlights. Like I said, I did have a draft with Mateta on the bench, and this is it. It's not really too dissimilar to the one before. I just basically gone for Luis Diaz instead of Darwin Núñez. I think I prefer Luis Diaz's minutes to Núñez. I think he probably starts both games of the double, just with how well he has been playing for Liverpool. But like I said, he just hasn't quite been getting involved in the goals for me. But when you look at the expected points, they are better than Darwin Núñez. When you look at Darwin Núñez, 6.1 and 6 for Diaz. Darwin Núñez 4.7, 4.6. So, yeah, I mean, DraftHound is saying that Diaz has better expected points, probably because they've also factored in his expected minutes. I just think I prefer Darwin, but maybe, if you have a different opinion to me, that's fine. I've made a draft here to help you out. You could go for Luis Diaz. And again, if you still wanted to go 3 up front, Mateta looked really dangerous against Liverpool. I think you could pick him as a genuine option as well and potentially just bench Diaz if you don't believe in him. But yeah, I think this draft here is an alternative, but obviously this is the one I prefer. So we go Pickford, 8 Nori if he's fit to play, but likewise I think Senesi and Munoz, if we don't get confirmation that 8 Nori is fit, they can quite simply easily come in. Gabriel and Virgil van Dijk, Saka, Salah, Havertz, Eze in midfield, Solanke, Darwin Núñez and Cunha up front. Alright, and that's the end of the video and my free hit draft. If you enjoyed that, please let me know by leaving a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of that draft. If there are any changes you'd make, I'd be interested to know in the comments. And maybe type in your draft in the comments and I'll try and rate them if I can. Like I said, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. You can subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.